Welcome to another exciting edition of Ladies Talk, a woman's heart, mind, and soul, with your host Winnie Adisa, and with me in the studio I have Patience Mombi. So good to have you on the show.
Thank you.
You're looking so lovely in purple. I love the jewelry and all that, everything going on, you know, from head to toe. But you don't say.
It's good to be an African lady. Yes, but I could lend you my dress after the show.
Yeah, you had better. I love purple and black, you know. So one thing about Ladies Talk, you know, I invite ladies to come and share what they've gone through, because we get to learn from one another. So glad to have you on the show, Patience.
Thanks for inviting me.
And you know, you had better keep your bubbly character because she is bubbly. She's very, very talkative. So if you start pretending and keeping quiet and go like, no, that's not you. Anyway, so we're talking about rape, life after rape. You know, there's so many rape cases that have been going on throughout the country. People have been raped. People keep quiet about it. Some people go into depression. What do you have to say about that?
I think the worst thing is choosing not to leave after something tragic or traumatic happens to you. It may be rape, it may be something else. But every person has to make that choice, whether to leave, go on living, or just exist or die. The choice is really yours. We all have control of what we do with ourselves. Personally, I chose to leave. So yes, every day gets better. It's not perfect yet, but every day gets better because I've made the choice to leave.
And you know, by the way, it's funny how people make ridiculous statements. They say that person was raped because she was dressed in a skimpy way. She was dressed in a short skirt, revealing clothes. Is that the case?
No,
really?
I was dressed very formally in the morning. I was going to work, and I actually still remember that I was in a turtleneck because it was a chilly morning.
Really?
So there was nothing for you to see in a long jacket and and a skirt that was below the knee.
Whoa.
So really,
decently dressed.
I was decently dressed. It was early in the morning. It was before 8 a.m. So you can't
8 in the morning.
So you can't again say that it happened, you know, at night. I was out late.
Yeah, you were at the wrong time, at the wrong place.
I was at home, so I was in the right place at the right time.
Going to work early in the morning.
Yeah, so
what?
I think rape can happen to anyone, male or female, because we have to accept that also males get raped.
Yes.
And it can happen to anyone at any time and at any place.
And it's sad how we're seeing even children being raped, old women being raped.
And I think that just blows my mind. My grandmom is 89, and I hate to imagine. And I also can't understand why a young guy needs to go and rape an old woman.
Old woman, for goodness sake.
Why, on the other hand, you need to try it out with children. I still think either way, whoever you do it to, it is still wrong. And in a way, they are eroding who we are as human beings, because what happens is that with a rape, you take away the dignity of a person. And even you who's raping, you're losing your own dignity. It goes both ways.
Yeah, exactly.
If you need to rape, then really,
think about your sisters.
You're even worse than an animal, because what happens is, if you look at the cows or even the chicken that we like making fun of, that's not what happens. Somebody needs to give consent. And I just think either way, we need to, as a people, as Kenyans or wherever we are, as human beings, we need to take back our dignity. You cannot live to the level of below an animal.
Yeah. And you know, a lot of times people get raped and they keep quiet about it. So if you can share your story, because I know this is something that has been happening in the society. Probably there's a girl or a lady or a man outside there who has been raped, and they're wondering, okay, now what do I do? If you can share your story and just take us through what happened, you know, to get to where you are right now.
Okay. As I said, I was leaving for work. It was just a morning. I woke up feeling good about myself, so I took time dressing.
As ladies, you know, we have to take time.
Yes. Normally, I don't really. I could probably get dressed in half an hour and I'm out. I think this was a morning that I just felt I wanted to look good.
Oh.
So I took my time in dressing. I still remember the suit because it was actually a gift from my mom. And I picked out my favorite gold jewelry set and I put it on. And, well, I think in the process I got late. So when I got out, I realized it was going to 8 and I was going to be late. So I called the motorbike man to come and pick me up, but he didn't respond. And as I stood there, I think I was now
outside your veranda.
Outside, I was on my veranda. I'd locked the house. I was actually on the veranda. And I must explain how the compound was. I think it's important because our houses were, you know, in twos. So there would be two together, and there were about 5 units in the compound. And so two gentlemen came from, well, boys really, came from the left.
Boys.
Yeah, they couldn't have been about 22, 23. I think the oldest looked about 25. And they asked me if I knew a guy called John. Now, there was a boy called John, a young man in the neighbor's house. And I wondered why they asking me about John, because one, they didn't come through the gate because I could see the gate from where I was standing, and they hadn't come through the gate. So I just asked why. What's the problem? And they were very specific, including where he worked. And I found that a bit strange. So I said, why? And they felt I'd been rude because I'd asked why. And so they asked me, where are you going? I said, I'm going to work. So they asked me, are you calling the police? I said, no, I was calling the motorbike guy to pick me up. So they pulled at that time now, they pulled out their gun. So they were pointing the gun. It was at close range. So, and they picked the phone. I said, you can check. Clearly says motorbike. And they said, give us the keys to your house. And you know how ladies sometimes we just throw things. So I was not quite sure where it was in the handbag. So I said, let me check. I'm not sure where my keys are. And of course they asked me, is there anyone else in your house? I said, no. Then they asked me, you didn't hear a gunshot? I said, no. And they said, well, we know we've shot somebody in the other house and they've died. I said, well, I didn't hear the gunshot.
And it's true you hadn't had anything.
No, I hadn't had, actually. Now, afterwards, when I realized, they thought I had the gunshot. So when they saw me calling, they thought I was calling
the police.
Whereas I was calling the motorbike guy.
You were just minding your own business.
Yeah, because I didn't even know, the compound was quiet, and so I didn't know there was anyone or anything going on. And I'd not had any commotion throughout. So anyway, I got the keys from the handbag. They opened my house and they picked my handbag and they said, do you have any money? I said, no. They said, where are the ATM cards? I gave them the ATM cards. Well, I had some money in my handbag, which somehow they didn't see when they emptied it. So they said, why are you so, of course they were not upset that I didn't have money. But, they said, okay, take her to the neighbor's house where everybody else is. So this guy took me to my neighbor's house.
Where everyone else is.
That was a shock when I got there. Everyone was a crowd because there were not just two gentlemen, it was a whole gang of boys, about 10 or so. And there were very many in there. And it looked like a marketplace. Everybody was busy doing something.
So they were together?
Yes, apparently this was a gang that was raiding. And they were robbing my neighbor. And as they took me towards the bedrooms, I found the landlord's brother on the floor, just tied. And so I was thrown into a bedroom. And the gang leader, because Zanu had come out with his number 2, put me in there and said, let's go back and pick things from her house.
So at that particular time, what was going through your mind?
I think I was just, first of all, shocked to find so many people in that house.
Young boys.
Boys, because now the people I'd seen at least looked like they were in their 20s. But the ones I found there were definitely not in their 20s. They looked like about 17, 18, 19-year-old boys. And there were so many, and it was all this beehive of activity. And, you're being led through. I can see everyone because I was not blindfolded. And I was wondering, what is going on? And then you find the landlord's brother on the floor, tied up, face down, so he lifts his head when I come, and then they hit him and he puts his head down.
Oh.
And I'm still remembering they've told me they've shot someone, so clearly it's not this one. And I think I was just confused because I didn't know what was going on. So they put me into the bedroom, and the gang leader said, okay, let's go back and pack the things from her house, since now it was open.
That time, were they violent on you?
No, they were very easy. In fact, it was a conversation like we're having it now. And so they put me there in the bedroom, and they went. A few minutes later, I need to describe, the gang leader was some tall gentleman. His number 2 was not so tall, was a guy in dreadlocks. Small, those small locks, not the big ones. And he came back and he said, he didn't like me even from the word go.
What?
Said, oh, this is a lady who was answering us and she's not afraid. That's how he started. And I don't know, something just hit me that there was something not right. And I quietly just said, God, please give me favor in this situation, whatever it is. And so he walked out, and he came back again and said, and you're looking at us, you could identify us, if you saw us.
What?
I think he didn't realize
This is
that
the guy who didn't like you.
Yeah, he didn't realize in all that confusion, I couldn't even remember what they looked like. So I said, no, I can't remember any of you. So he said, blindfold her. So somebody came in and blindfolded me.
But you had already seen all of them.
I'd
Marked
seen
their faces.
I'd seen the 2 who had seen more often, because the rest was, when I walked into the house, there was no time to stop. They just led me to the
mark
room.
their faces, yeah.
So a few minutes later, I hear some whispering on my side. I didn't know what they were talking about. And that's when I felt my clothes being removed, because now, you see, I'm blindfolded, and he came and I'm blindfolded and my hands are tied at the back. So really, I can't help myself. So started removing my clothes. And
were you screaming? Of course you started screaming, or had they?
I didn't scream because I was blindfolded. They had this thing they put on your mouth and the hands. So the only thing you could do was bite the kitamba.
Oh, Lord.
Because that's the only thing I could do.
Those are things that we see in the movies. So
Well, sometimes you live through these horror movies yourself. So after they did that, then they began. One by one. I think by the time we got to the 6th guy, I stopped counting.
they started now raping you.
Yeah, one by one. And, apparently the order was you need to keep packing. So what would happen is one guy would come into the room
While the others...
are working, finish, go out, call the next person. And they kept jumping over my landlord's brother, who was now at the door. Who was
Outside
equally helpless, just on the corridor. He was equally helpless.
But of course he knew what was going on.
Yes, because he could hear.
And,
one by one, they came. Then by the 6th one, I think I'd lost it. So I stopped. I stopped counting. You stop.
You were unconscious.
I was conscious, but the only thing my body did was it went numb. I think the pain was too much, so just completely numb. I was now not...
In that time you're crying.
All you can do is your tears are rolling because you can't scream, you have something in the mouth. And you also don't know, you can't... And you can't react because there's nothing to do. You're just helpless. In fact, you're like a cow to the slaughter. At least I think the slaughterhouse, you can scream or... There was nothing I could do. I can't even describe the emotions because there's something beyond pain. And I remember because I could remember the leader's voice because he talked to me before, and he came and said, Mami, watu wanakufanya hivi kwa nini? It's like he's not part of it. So while he's doing that, his buckle is coming off. I can hear the belt.
Oh, Lord.
And he did his part, and it was very traumatizing because he
kind of like sympathized with you, but then again he ends up raping you.
Exactly. And it was,
That's just a mockery.
Exactly, it was going through the mockery. And he finishes by telling me, if you need this again, I'm always available. And you're thinking in your mind, you're raping me. And it was a very traumatizing experience. So I remember when they did their stuff, the last person was asked, and you, because somehow, people just walk in and out. And he said, no. But there were never two at a time. It was just one go, because they,
so the other one was told to go in and do whatever.
Yes, when his son came to rape, because you were supposed to pack the things and come and rape me, then go back and continue like
packing.
Nothing happened.
Yeah.
Please finish your job. He just said no. So then he was told, all right, tie her up properly.
So he didn't touch you.
So he didn't touch me, and he was told to tie me up. So they left again while he was left to tie. And all he told me was, Mommy, these guys are going to kill you if you scream, so don't scream. And I remember that striking me, because he said, these guys, like he was not part of them, but he just said, these guys. So he told me, I'll tie you, but in such a way that when we leave, you'll be able to pull out your hand. And I remember that,
yourself,
yes, I'd asked God to just give me favor somehow. So this guy came, he tied me up. Then the number 2 guy came, because his voice was very...
The one who didn't like you.
The one was really rough. He came back and said, why are you tying her up so gently? So cover up completely. So he came and tied me himself and
that time
covered...
you're able to just mark their
I
voices,
could, yeah, I could. So he came and tied the face and the nose, so I couldn't breathe. And he tightened the wrists completely. And when he tightened everything, it was, I think if I'd been left in that state, I'd have just died there, which probably was the idea. But after that, the same young man came back again and said, and loosened them. Then he asked me, can you breathe now? I said, yes. Then he said, okay, let me readjust the knot, but you must pretend that I have tied you very tightly. I told him, okay.
Wow, at least he was cooperative. Yeah?
I never even got to say thank you, and I always pray that his life turned out well for this particular person. So then they came back. The number 2 came back again and asked him, you've tied her up properly? He said, yes. Then they locked me in the room and left. I have no time period, but I think by the time I left, somebody came to help me. It must have been 2 or 3 hours later.
2 or 3 hours?
Yeah, it was quite, by the time people, came out and all this. And I remember when my neighbor screamed and people came. And they came.
That time you were unconscious, eh?
You were very conscious. I didn't pass out at any time. But when I heard people screaming, that's when I knew they'd left. So I simply pulled out my hand and untied, because my hand now was free. Then I untied the blindfold and the one from the mouth. And all I could do was sit in the room, because I couldn't open it, I couldn't run, and I couldn't even move. And the last thing that the young man had done was give me back my clothes. He'd actually dressed me back. So when people broke the door, they found me covered, because he had done that for me. And so people came. It's the neighbors who helped me. Actually, the saddest part I remember was that when they broke down the door, was my kid brother who came through the door first. And I think was more traumatized that it had happened so near to him, yet he had done nothing.
Yes.
He had not been aware, because we lived in the same compound, but he lived further away from me. So yeah, I got it. And then I actually was helped by neighbors, and they got me to hospital. Yeah.
Wow, quite an emotional story. I'm actually fighting and holding my tears. But we have to take a short commercial break. Don't go away. We'll be right back after this.